Welcome, friends, to another exciting episode of A VGM Journey. And I'm your host, The Messenger. The track that we're playing in this week's show is Cave of Fear from the game Guardians Crusade. And that might have been composed by either Yasuhiro Nakano, Akihiro Motoyama, Fumio Tanabe, Luna Umegaki, and Mutsumi Ishimura. We got some really cool tracks for you guys, and even a nice mixture of real chill tracks and also some energetic tracks as well. And I say, let's get right into things. This next track is coming from The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. The track is Secunda, and that was composed by Jeremy Soule. That track that you just heard, that was Secunda from the game The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, and that was composed by Jeremy Soule. Such a classic track from a classic game, and it's hard to believe that it's been over 10 years since Skyrim came out. And this was a track that I've heard plenty of times in-game, where you're going from town to town and you find yourselves all alone out in the forest or just the what I would like to call the overworld. And it just gives off the feeling of you're all alone in a huge world and that anything could happen. So you could be walking down the path just minding your own business, and then all of a sudden you have these creatures coming after you trying to attack you and kill you, or you run into thieves, and sometimes if you get lucky you might run into two other enemies fighting each other. And I think it's usually cooler if there are two, I don't want to call them mages, but I guess wizards, shooting spells at each other. And you're just thinking to myself, hey, this is random, but I think this is really cool too. And for whatever reason, this song's been popping up in some memes as of late, where usually there's some kind of oddly worded dialogue. And that if I have known about it sooner, I probably would have had this on my memes episode, which was level 69 of the show. I think that's enough rambling for a moment, and I think it's time to move on to our next track, which is a request from Chris Murray. And he wanted me to play this track from Cosmic Star Heroine. And I hope that I'm pronouncing it right, but the track is called La Salle, and that was composed by HyperDuck SoundWorks. That track that you just heard, that was Soule from the game Cosmic Star Heroine, and that was composed by HyperDuck SoundWorks, and that was requested by Chris Murray. So thank you, Chris Murray, for that request. I had to do a double check on who requested this track because it doesn't start off as a typical Chris Murray requested track. And I was really digging the synth sounds. And then about 20 seconds in, it goes into your typical Chris Murray rock out and melt your brain type of JRPG sounding music. And I wasn't familiar with this game at all. So I was doing a little bit of quick research, and I find out that this was a kickstarted JRPG that plays pretty similar to, I would say, Chrono Trigger. And I think the music is pretty rad. And I feel as though I could best describe it as Falcom Sound Team meets Volt Supreme. Because I always have to shout out Mr. Volt Supreme. That guy is a pretty cool dude. And I might have to check out the game too, as I did see that there was a Switch port of the game, so I might actually check that out. So I want to say, once again, thank you, Chris, for that track. I think for this next track, I want to go back to the whole classic track, classic game, and wanted to play this track from Plants vs. Zombies. The track is Grasswalk, and that was composed by Laura Shigihara. That track that you just heard, that was Grasswalk from the game Plants vs. Zombies, and that was composed by Laura Shigihara. I played a little bit of Plants vs. Zombies not too long ago, and it hit me that the soundtrack for the game was really good, and that the game itself still holds up quite a bit. And the thing that I really dig about the soundtrack is that even though it has the feeling of calmness, there's a lot of tension in it too, because you're setting up these plants in a tower defense like gameplay, and you're up against zombies, hence the name Plants vs. Zombies. And I generally think the levels start off pretty easy. Then they start throwing tougher and tougher zombies at you. And you have to manage your resources and also set up the right plant in the right spot, however, that you're going to strategize. And I feel like most people like to talk about the credits song, which I find it to be pretty catchy. But I think the rest of the score is really, really good. And I know that this is an earlier level song, but it's still a lot of good stuff. I'm thinking it's time to move on to our next track. And this is coming from the game Soldam. The track is Versus Mode, and it was possibly composed by either Atsuyoshi Isemura, Yasuyuki Suzuki, Yasuhiko Takashiba, and Takahiro Ogata. That track that you just heard, that was Versus Mode from the game Soldam, and that was composed by Atsuyoshi Ishimura, Yasuyuki Suzuki, Yasuhiko Takashiba, and Takahiro Ogata. And that's going to just about do it for the show this week. If you like what you've been listening to, have your friends check out the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever podcatching service that you can think of. I'm more than likely going to be on there. You can email the show at vgmjourney@yahoo.com, and you could also check us out on Twitter at vgmjourney. We're going to play things out with one more track, and I think it's a real special one, and that is the ending theme from the game Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, and that was composed by Koji Kondo. Have a good week, everyone.